Let me tell you a story that has resonated deeply within me, and I'm sure resonates with many of you. I want you to imagine a world where every reflection in the mirror, every social media post, every interaction feels like a competition for perfection. A world where masks are the currency and superficiality is the universal language. Does that sound familiar? It's a stage we live on, a global theater where we often feel compelled to play a role, to present an edited version of ourselves to be accepted, to fit in, or to simply survive. But what if I told you there's a different path? A path that, though sometimes lonely and arduous, but promises a reward that no external validation can offer. A true freedom. This time, I'm not just going to talk about philosophy or an abstract concept that lives in books. Today, we're going to explore the weight, the immense and sometimes overwhelming weight of being authentic in a superficial world. And believe me, what we're about to discover here is much more than a theory. It's a guide, a map for navigating the turbulent waters of our own existence and perhaps finding our true north. Since I was a child, I was always fascinated by the idea of truth. Not the truth of facts, of what's tangible and verifiable, the truth of what we are inside. I remember spending hours observing people, trying to decipher what lay behind their smiles, and their words and their gestures. And the more I observed, the more I became aware of the disparity between what people showed and what I intuitively sensed they truly were. This early observation was my first gateway to what Jung would later call the persona. Think of the persona as your social wardrobe. You have different outfits for different occasions, right? A suit for work, comfortable clothes for home, something more elegant for a night out. Similarly, we construct different facets of our personality to interact in various contexts. The diligent employee, the funny friend, the obedient child, the responsible parent. And this in itself isn't intrinsically bad. The persona is a necessary tool. It allows us to function in society, protects us from overexposure, and helps us navigate the complexities of human interactions. Without it, we'd be vulnerable, raw, and likely ineffective in our social relationships. The problem, however, arises when we confuse the mask with the face. When the persona becomes so convincing that we start to believe that we are that mask, and not the complex, multifaceted psyche that resides beneath. Jung masterfully described it. The persona is the system of adaptation, or the way one presents oneself to the world. It's what he called the social conformity of the individual. But what happens when social conformity demands that we give up essential parts of ourselves? When the mask becomes a prison, suffocating our true essence. This is where the weight of superficiality begins to be felt. In a world obsessed with image, with external validation, with what will people say, the pressure to maintain the perfect persona can be overwhelming. We find ourselves trapped in an endless cycle of external validation, seeking approval in likes, comments, promotions, recognition. And every time we achieve that validation, we experience a momentary relief, a false sense of fulfillment. But that feeling is ephemeral, like the foam of a wave dissolving on the sand. And soon, the need for more validation resurfaces, is stronger than before. Imagine for a moment a young person who dreams of being an artist. However, their family expects them to pursue a more safe and respectable career like law. To please them, and to fit into social expectations, this young person adopts the persona of the diligent law student. They study hard, get good grades, dress professionally, talk about legal topics. Externally, they are the perfect child, the exemplary student. But internally, a part of them feels withered, a silent voice yearning for paintbrushes and canvases. Over time, this internal dissonance can manifest as anxiety, depression, or a profound sense of emptiness. The persona has become so strong that it has eclipsed the true self. Here's an important tip. Whenever you feel a pang of discomfort, a sense of not fitting in a role or situation, pay attention. It could be your true essence trying to break through the persona's surface. It's a sign, a murmur from your soul telling you something here isn't aligned. Jung understood that this dissonance was crucial. Discomfort, conflict, crisis are often the catalyst for growth, for the dismantling of facades that no longer serve us. The longing to be authentic, to live a life aligned with our true self, isn't a fad, it's not a passing trend. It's a deep psychological imperative. It's the call of the self, the center of our psychic totality according to Jung, which propels us towards individuation, towards becoming who we are truly meant to be. But this journey isn't for the faint of heart. It demands courage, introspection, and the willingness to confront what lies hidden behind the mask. And that, my friends, is the true weight of authenticity in a world that often prefers illusion to truth. The persona is the facade we present to the world, and how over-identification with it can imprison us. But if the persona is the face we show, what about everything we hide? What about those parts of ourselves that we consider unacceptable, shameful, or simply not worthy of being brought into the light of day? This is where one of Jung's most fascinating and often misunderstood concepts comes into play. This is the shadow. Let me illustrate it with an analogy. Imagine your personality as a house. The persona is the main facade, the well-kept front garden, the windows facing the street, what you allow the world to see. But in that house, there are also dark rooms, dusty basements, and attics full of things we prefer not to look at. These are the shadow. The shadow isn't necessarily bad in a moral sense. It's simply everything that the individual consciousness doesn't recognize, or doesn't want to recognize about itself. These are the repressed aspects, the undesirable qualities, the unacceptable impulses, but also undeveloped talents, stifled creativity, and even positive aspects that our culture or upbringing taught us to suppress. Jung asserted that the shadow is the dark brother or dark sister of the ego. It's the part of us that we've relegated to darkness because it doesn't fit the image we want to project or what society deems good or acceptable. If society values calmness, our impulsivity might go into the shadow. If kindness is valued, our anger might be repressed. And so, countless characteristics, both negative and positive, can end up in this vast psychic storehouse. The problem with the shadow is that, like objects in a dark attic, it doesn't disappear just because we don't look at it. In fact, the more we ignore it, the more power it gains. The shadow tends to project outwards, meaning we often see in others, especially those who intensely irritate or fascinate us, those traits we deny in ourselves. Have you ever noticed how sometimes the things that bother you most about another person are precisely those you secretly fear exist within yourself? That's the shadow at work. I'll give you a personal example. For a long time, I was deeply irritated by people who boasted about their achievements or constantly sought attention. I saw them as arrogant and superficial. Over time, and after much introspection, I began to realize that within me existed a repressed desire for recognition, a longing to be seen and valued that I myself had judged as vain and therefore had pushed into my shadow. Once I recognized and accepted that part of myself, my irritation towards others drastically decreased. And more importantly, I could begin to integrate that desire for recognition in a healthier and more productive way. Integrating the shadow doesn't mean becoming it. It is recognizing its existence and understanding how it influences our behavior and perceptions. It's a process of deep self-knowledge that demands humility and courage. It means facing what shames or scares us about ourselves. And here lies another great weight of authenticity, the confrontation with our own darkness. In a superficial world that seeks perfection and constant positivity, acknowledging our imperfections and dark sides might seem like a betrayal of that facade. But it is precisely in that confrontation that the potential for immense growth resides. Jung taught us that the shadow is not an enemy to be eradicated, but an integral part of our totality. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Working with the shadow is the vital first step towards individuation, the process of becoming a complete and authentic human being. If we avoid the shadow, we become incomplete, unbalanced, and often enslaved by unconscious behavioral patterns. Next time, pay attention to your intense reactions to other people, both positive and negative. What fascinates or enrages you in others often has its roots in your own shadow. If someone deeply irritates you because of their dishonesty, ask yourself, is there a small dishonesty in me that I don't want to acknowledge? If you deeply admire someone's freedom, is there a repressed desire for freedom within you? This exercise, though sometimes uncomfortable, is a powerful tool for self-knowledge. In today's superficial world, where toxic positivity often urges us to ignore our negative emotions and imperfections, the concept of the shadow is more relevant than ever. It encourages us to embrace our totality, to recognize that light and darkness coexist within us. By doing so, we not only become more complete and authentic, but also more compassionate with ourselves and with others. We stop projecting our own internal struggles onto the outside world and begin to take responsibility for our own psyche. The path of authenticity is not a path of constant light and perpetual happiness. It is a path of integration, of accepting all facets of who we are, even those we prefer to hide. It is an act of courage in a world that often pushes us towards conformity and denial. But the reward is the freedom to truly be oneself, with all our contradictions and complexities. It is in the union of the persona and the shadow, in the recognition of both, that we begin to glimpse the true power of our authentic self. Now that we've unveiled the persona, the mask we wear for the world, and dare to look at the shadow, that collection of hidden parts of ourselves, let's delve into the next level of the Jungian psyche, a concept that is often the most difficult to grasp, but perhaps the most powerful for understanding the weight of authenticity. The Anima and Animus. Imagine that, beyond your own personal experience, there is a kind of ancestral library within you. A library full of stories, symbols, and patterns of behavior that humanity has experienced over millennia. This is, in essence, Jung's idea of the collective unconscious, a deeper layer of the unconscious that all human beings share, and from which archetypes emerge. Archetypes are those universal forms, those psychic templates that manifest in myths, dreams, religions, and, of course, in our own psyche. Among the most significant archetypes for the journey of authenticity are the Anima and the Animus. Jung observed that within the psyche of every man, there is an unconscious feminine figure, which he called the Anima. And within the psyche of every woman, there is an unconscious masculine figure, which he called the Animus. These are not simply genders in the biological sense. Those are psychic principles that represent the totality of qualities contrary to our conscious gender. Let me explain it in a simpler way. If you are a man, your anima contains all the qualities culturally associated with the feminine. Intuition, emotion, receptivity, creativity, connection with the unconscious. If you are a woman, your animus embodies the qualities associated with the masculine. Reason, logic, assertiveness, objectivity, the capacity for action. The problem, the weight of this, arises when these internal qualities are not recognized or integrated. In a superficial world that often imposes rigid gender roles and one-dimensional expectations, the integration of the anima or animus can be a true challenge. Think of a man who has been raised in a culture where men don't cry, or men must be strong and logical. This man may repress his anima, that is, his emotional, intuitive, and affectionate qualities. If he does, his anima doesn't disappear. Instead, it projects. He might seek these qualities in external women, idealizing them or, conversely, criticizing them for expressing what he himself doesn't allow himself to feel. It could also manifest internally as inexplicable mood swings, feelings of emotional emptiness, or a lack of connection with his inner world. He would be sacrificing his emotional authenticity for a facade of superficial masculinity. Similarly, consider a woman who has grown up in an environment where she is expected to be submissive, emotionally reactive, or not to have strong opinions. Her animus, the archetype of reason, assertiveness, and action, may be repressed. If it is, she might project that animus onto men, seeking strong masculine figures to make decisions for her, or constantly feeling intimidated by male authority. Internally, she might struggle with indecision, a lack of confidence in her own ideas, or difficulty in taking action in the world. She would be sacrificing her intellectual and assertive authenticity for a facade of passive femininity. The integration of the anima and animus is crucial for authenticity because it allows us to transcend gender stereotypes and embrace the richness of our complete psyche. It's not about becoming less man or less woman. It's about becoming a more complete, more balanced, and ultimately more authentic human being. It is the recognition that we are more than the labels society imposes on us. A vital piece of advice here is to pay attention to the people you are strongly attracted to or repelled by, especially in romantic or close friendships. Often, the projected anima or animus seeks its counterpart externally. If you find yourself inexplicably drawn to someone with qualities you feel you lack, Or if you feel frustrated by the lack of certain qualities in others, it could be a sign that those qualities need to be integrated within yourself. The process of integrating the anima or animus is a fundamental part of Jung's path of individuation, the central process of becoming the person one is meant to be. It's a journey of self-discovery that requires us to go beyond the superficial expectations of our gender and society. It invites us to explore the depths of our psyche and to bring to consciousness the hidden riches of our being. In a world that often pushes us to rigidly identify with predefined gender roles, being authentic means having the audacity to allow intuition to guide reason, emotion to inform logic, and action to be nourished by receptivity. It means recognizing and honoring the complexity of our own nature, rejecting the superficial simplifications that psychically impoverish us. The weight of this authenticity lies in the courage to challenge social norms and ingrained expectations. It's daring to be an emotionally expressive man or an assertive and rational woman, not for the sake of defiance, is because it is the genuine expression of their complete self. By doing so, we not only free ourselves, but also contribute to a more tolerant and understanding society regarding the diversity of human experience. This is a fundamental step toward wholeness. We've journeyed through the persona, the shadow, the anima, and animus, unraveling the layers of the psyche that Carl Jung bequeathed to us. Now, we arrive at the pinnacle of his theory, the ultimate goal of this journey toward authenticity, the process of individuation and the encounter with the self. This is where everything converges, where the weight of being authentic transforms into the lightness of being free. Imagine that all the pieces we've been exploring, the social mass, the repressed parts, the internal qualities opposite to our conscious gender, are like scattered elements of a puzzle. Individuation is the process of bringing those pieces together, of integrating all these disparate aspects of our psyche to form a coherent and unique whole. Jung described it as the process by which the human being becomes the individual that he actually is. It is not a process of becoming different or better according to external standards. It is becoming more fully oneself. This is not an easy path, and this is where the true initial weight of authenticity lies. It requires deep honesty with oneself, the willingness to look squarely at not only our virtues, also our flaws, our contradictions, our deepest fears. In a superficial world that constantly pushes us towards uniformity, towards fitting into pre-established molds, individuation is a radical act of silent rebellion. It is the brave decision to follow your own path, even if that means going against the grain. A clear example of the struggle against individuation is seen in social pressure. From school, we are taught to conform, to follow rules, not to stand out too much. In adult life, this translates into choosing careers we are not passionate about, maintaining empty relationships out of fear of loneliness, or adopting others' opinions simply to be accepted. Every time we do this, we move a little further away from our true self. We feel a subtle, sometimes not so subtle, sense of dissatisfaction, an emptiness that no amount of success or external validation can fill. This emptiness is a sign that the self, the central archetype of totality and the organizing center of the psyche, is calling. The self is not the ego. It is much vaster. It is the totality of the conscious and unconscious psyche. It is our true essence, our inherent potential for wholeness. Jung believed that the self is the archetype of totality and self-regulation. It is what guides us towards integration, towards the realization of our unique potential. When we feel lost, when life seems meaningless, it is often a sign that we have become disconnected from ourself. The path of individuation is, therefore, a constant dialogue between the ego, our consciousness, and the self, our unconscious totality. It is learning to listen to that inner voice, those intuitions, those dreams, those synchronicities, which are messages from the self guiding us towards our authenticity. Next time, pay attention to your dreams. Jung considered dreams to be the voice of nature within us, is a direct path to the unconscious and, therefore, to the self. Don't dismiss them as mere fantasies. They often contain deep symbols and messages that reveal aspects of your shadow, your anima or animus, or guide you in your individuation process. Write them down, reflect on them, look for patterns. They can be your best allies on this journey. Another important point is to recognize that individuation is not selfishness. It's not about ignoring others or becoming a hermit. In fact, By becoming more authentic and integrated beings, paradoxically, we become more capable of genuinely relating to others. We stop projecting our own neuroses and expectations onto them and can see and love them for who they truly are, not for the role we assign them. Authentic relationship with others is born from an authentic relationship with oneself. The weight of superficiality in today's world is immense. We are constantly bombarded with images of what we should be, of what we should have. We are encouraged to seek happiness in consumption, in external approval, in conformity. But Jung shows us that true happiness, wholeness, resides in the inner journey, in the courage to shed masks, to embrace our light and shadows, and to listen to the call of ourself. In the end, individuation is not a destination to be reached, but a continuous process of self-discovery. It is an endless journey of becoming more and more oneself. And although the weight of authenticity may at first feel like a burden, the burden of personal responsibility, of confrontation with oneself, of the solitude that sometimes accompanies being different, over time it transforms. It becomes the lightness of freedom, the deep joy of living a life aligned with your true self. You are no longer acting, you are being. And there is no greater liberation than that. The weight of being authentic in a superficial world, according to Carl Jung, is the challenge of shedding your persona to reveal your true face, of confronting your shadow to embrace your totality, of integrating your anima or animus to achieve psychic wholeness, and finally, of embarking on the journey of individuation to connect with yourself. It is a path that demands courage, but promises the most valuable reward: the freedom to be truly and without reservation who you are meant to be. We've traversed a fascinating path from the masks we wear to the depths of our being. We've explored the persona, the shadow, the anima and animus, and finally, the magnificent process of individuation and the encounter with the self, according to Carl Jung. If there's one thing we've learned today, it's that authenticity isn't an innate quality we either possess or don't. It's a journey. It's a choice. It's a continuous act of courage. In a world that often pushes us to be copies, to fit in, to seek validation in the echo chambers of social media and others' expectations, true power lies in daring to be original, to be genuine. And that, my friends, is a power within reach of each and every one of you. But this isn't a path you have to walk alone. This journey is meant to be explored, to be discussed, to be questioned. And I'd love to hear what you think. What part of this journey resonated most with you? Do you feel the weight of superficiality in your daily life? Are you ready to begin or continue your own path to authenticity? Leave your comments down below. Let's talk about it. Share your reflections, your questions, your own experiences. If this video has touched you, if it's given you a new perspective, hit that like button and share it with someone you think could also benefit from this conversation. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Here, we'll continue to explore life's big questions, the ideas that challenge us and inspire us to be more, to live with greater depth, and to find truth in a world full of noise. The path to authenticity is a constant journey of self-discovery. It's a challenge, yes, but it's also the promise of a fuller, more meaningful, and truly free life. Don't settle for the surface. Dare to dive into the depths of your own being.